What's up, guys? This is Coach Matt from Force Fitness and Performance. Today I just want to take you through one tip on your mobility and stretching that's going to take it to the next level. It's something that we see people miss a lot of times when they're doing common mobility and stretching routines, and this is something that's kind of an underlying principle that can apply to everything. So what that thing is starting from your active range of motion rather than your passive range of motion. To frame why this is important, let's lay some foundational principles here, okay? So first off, joint mobility at any joint, the ability to move your joint through space in a full and unrestricted range of motion, is a prerequisite for building professional and competent levels of strength and conditioning and skill on top of that, okay? So whether you are a weekend warrior who just really enjoys getting out and going hard on the weekends and having fun, playing at the rec league, doing Tough Mudders, Spartan races, all that, having joints that stay healthy and mobile throughout that experience is going to allow you to continue to do that. And if you're a professional athlete or an athlete who's just trying to get onto the varsity team in high school or compete at the collegiate level, we need you to have that framework, that baseline of mobility, so that strength and conditioning can be applied to it in the most effective way and maximize your potential. So we really believe that mobility is the underpinning of all these other disciplines and practices that we do as trainers, okay, and athletes. So from there, if we look at mobility, mobility is a combination of two things. It's a combination of your structure and how your hardware is wired, how your hardware is functioning, okay? So if I have a permanently shortened biceps, I'm not gonna be able to extend it. That's just part of life, right? But beyond structure, we also have a neurological component. Your brain and central nervous system might just be telling your bicep to stay tight because it's worried about your elbow being protected. And I actually had this experience going through an unnamed workshop certification event where they had us doing a lot of kipping pull-ups, and coming off of the kipping pull-ups the next day, elbows were stuck at 90 degrees, couldn't move them either into flexion or extension. That's not because my structure was incapable of it, it's because my nervous system had totally locked that area down to try to prevent further damage. And we can have these low levels of tension throughout the body at any given time, okay? So, and that's gonna play into our active versus passive range of motion in this way. When we go into a passive range of motion, what I mean is that something else is pulling me further than I would be able to move on my own, okay? The risk with passive range of motion mobility drills is that we are not allowing the nervous system to feel like it's in control of that movement and learning to control that new range of motion. So we see people overstretching, essentially, over-mobilizing, and then ending up with not seeing the mobility movements stick because their nervous system hasn't allowed them that new range of motion. In fact, most research on stretching says that the benefit comes from a decrease in neural tone. So a decrease in the amount of tension the brain is allowing. An increase in the amount of tension and range the brain is allowing to that joint and that muscle, okay? So hopefully that makes sense. I'm gonna give you example number one, which is probably the prime one I see, okay? It's the classic hamstring stretch, okay? So if people go down to stretch out the hamstring and they get in overly tight, we'll see this knee bent, back bent, and they're just like gritting their teeth and they're trying to press through and extend, and hopefully my mic's still working, extend through that and try to stretch out the hamstring. In this situation, your brain is thinking, I'm not in a safe space. I'm in a passive range of motion. I'm not able to control anything of this here. I'm not even able to control my breathing, okay? What we want you to do, and this is the key thing that's gonna work for every mobility thing, is start from your active range of motion. So if I were gonna lay here and I wanted to work hip flexion, I'm gonna pull that leg as high as I can actively, and I'm gonna adjust my position so that I'm starting there. Start from where the edge of your active range of motion is. Now, not only will I be able to change structure with many inputs over time, but I'm gonna be able to teach my nervous system to handle this range and just move a little bit past it. It's something that takes time, but if you are patient with it and use this technique with any of your mobility movements, you're gonna see huge gains. Another classic one, just for emphasis, is like a pigeon pose. A lot of people go into a pigeon pose and they'll be leaning forward. What's happening here, I'm stretching my back out more than I'm really stretching my hip, because my hip is in a passive range of motion here. If I stood up and I turn my hip into external rotation here, that's as much as I have. So when I go on the floor, I'm essentially forcing it the extra range of motion. So what we can do is bolster the position. Find a mat or something else to sit on, okay? If I lift this up, now leg is more approximate to what I could lift. If I can lift from there, that lets me know that I'm still in an active range of motion, and now I can work on not getting into my back, isolating the hip that I want, and working through the stretch here. So just a couple of quick examples. I hope they help. Start from your active range of motion rather than your passive range of motion. Use props, use ways to bolster or take weight off. Go into it slow, have patience. I hope this helps. And if you have any questions, drop them below. Thanks, guys.